So is there, can you see it? Should I zoom in a bit? It's better? Can you sort of see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you help me with the first one? How do we give the page 40 pixel spacing? Well,
HTML.
yeah.
And then we give margin 40.
Does everybody agree with that?
I did it as border spacing.
Border spacing? What is border spacing?
On the line.
Okay. To be honest, I don't know that property. I don't think I've ever used that property. But yeah, so the two possibilities were either margin or padding, right? So what is the difference between margin and padding? Can someone tell me?
Yeah, margin is the space outside of the border of each item, and padding is the space between the border and the content of the item. Like for example, welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So the padding is from the word welcome up until its border.
Mm-hmm. So if you look at that,
I think
We used a nice example, if you remember last time.
Yeah.
We used the building.
Yeah.
The furnitures are the content.
Mm-hmm.
The space between furniture and wall is a padding. The wall is a border, and space between walls and the outside is a margin.
The
Yeah.
garden.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everything on HTML is like a box model like this.
Mm-hmm.
The margin is outside the box model, and the padding is inside the box model.
Yeah.
That's the technical definition of it.
Could you use body instead of HTML?
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, you could easily use body and if it was me, I would have actually used body instead of HTML. But I mean, unless you have some browser custom, default browser styles that mess up something that you're writing because you're not using reset or normalize, or if you have some other styles that affect the HTML or the body, then it should be okay to use both. And then I would personally use padding instead of margin.
Okay.
Because then if I add a background, I know there is no background this time, so this time it's completely, maybe we should use something else. So if we have a red background, for example, and then we have used the margin instead of a padding. No? Okay.
No, it's then I must be a delay because I use body and I see white.
Yeah,
I
there
see
should be a
white around it.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna do this instead. So we say margin 40 and background red. Don't know why it's not doing that.
I have white in my margin here.
Yeah.
Because it's using Apple and that's Apple.
That's super weird. Normally, when you use margin, then it will not be a part of your background. So I have no idea what's happening right now. I will try to do it with the header instead. So we give it a margin 40, and then we say background red. There it works. And then if I say padding instead, when you say it's inclusive. So that's the difference. I don't know why the body was messing there. But yeah, so if it were me, I would use a padding, but in this example, both of them are completely fine. So let's try to skip number 2 for now. Can someone else help me with number 3, or at least the first part? So to give the logo 1 pixel solid border of that color. How do we do that?
Selector must be dot logo because it's a class.
Yeah.
And the border, border width, style, and color. Because it's the 3 information we have.
So what do I write?
Border style.
Yeah.
Solid. Border width. 1 pixel, and the border color.
Does everybody agree with that?
I mean, I always write border with the short codes.
Yeah.
Because it's less coding.
Yeah. So what Tamina is saying is these are specific properties, right? It is also possible and completely fine to just write this instead.
Yeah.
And that will result in the same thing. It's a bit difficult to see.
But if you do it this way, is there a specific sequence, or it's alright to do it, for example, solid 1px in the color?
As far as I know, it's common practice to do it in this order.
This order.
But I think it would work the other way around as well. So what? Yeah, it does. So what this does is if I save, and then if I look at the like this debug mode view of it, and then if I inspect the logo, then you see that there is a little arrow there, right? And if I open the arrow, then you can see that the border is a shorthand for a lot of different things. It's the top color, the bottom color, the left color. It's the style, the width, also the not the radius.
Border image source. I've never seen that one. Oh, that one is for backgrounds, like for gradients.
Yeah. So it is the same as writing border with style, and yeah, it's most common practice to just write one line because it's shorter. But sometimes you need something specific, then you would use the specific. Okay. What about if I want a padding of 10 pixel vertically and 30 pixel horizontally on the logo? How would I do that? Someone who didn't say anything yet?
And the logo, what is a part of this?
I can copy.
And
We should write padding.
And the padding of the
Padding 30 pixel or 10 pixel and 30.
10 pixel and 30 pixel. Like that?
I think must be reversed.
Yes.
vertical then horizontal, or
Because the first must be top and bottom. The second would be
This seems
left and right.
correct to me. Yeah, if I look at 10 pixel vertically, I can see it's the little one on top and bottom and the big one on left and right. So that's fine. So yeah, the padding is also a shorthand property, just like border. So if I refresh, you see padding has also a little arrow when I inspect it. So it will create top, right, bottom, left, depending on what I wrote. And the guys who have been with us the first time around, we did like an example, or we went through it pretty detailed, like what the difference between if you write one number versus if you write two numbers versus if you write three numbers versus if you write four numbers. Can someone help me? Do you get? Is there somebody who knows? Yeah.
If you only put one number, it means that all sides will be that amount.
Yeah.
If you put two,
Yeah.
the first is the top and bottom, the second is right and left,
Mhm.
and the third is top, and then right and left, and then bottom.
Mhm.
And then for four, it's top, right, bottom, and then left.
Yes. How do you remember that it's those four?
clockwise.
No, yeah,
Clockwise. Yeah, exactly. So you start at 12 and then that direction. So does it also make sense with the three numbers? Why it's what it is? So normally when you style stuff, you would have the same margin and padding on the left and the right side, right? So that's why sometimes you want something different on the top and something on the bottom, but the two left and right would be the same. So, and this shorthand, this is the same for most things that can occur on all sides. So also for margin and probably also on other stuff. I can't come to think of anything else right now, but probably also other stuff. Yeah, also like border radius and other things. Cool. Also border, I think. Yeah. Right. So that was number 3. Number 4. Somebody.
Anchors.
Yeah.
Color tomato. Text decoration none.
Mm-hmm. And what do I select?
I selected the anchor A.
The anchor A.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it applies to all 3.
So if I say color tomato and what did you say?
Text decoration none.
Okay. Cool. So does everybody agree with this?
No.
No. Why not?
Because A is all links,
Mm-hmm.
so you just occasionally should
Include
be
the logo too.
a class nav link.
Right. So in this case, we have selected all anchors, and you can see that besides the navlink anchors, we also have another one, which is the logo. So now our logo has also gotten this color. So it is better to select stuff
Class.
by their class, and it's best to do it sort of like a component approach, which means that like your nav is your nav component, and then the anchors in there are your nav links. And that way, if you try to isolate things into components class name wise, then you will not cross yourself by trying to select the different things having the same name, if you know what I mean.
But you see that the logo is writing over about.
Yeah.
Can we do that with margin? Or?
Well, it is. Can anyone explain to me why the logo is flowing over to about and services and contact?
I think because we make the pixels.
Because it's an inline element.
What was your question?
Why is it crossing over to other stuff? You were saying, Ricardo?
It's an inline element.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good guess or answer. So exactly. So the nav after the anchor is a block element. It's basically the same as a div, but it has more semantic value. And the anchor is, if you inspect it, I do most of my development using the inspect tool and the dev tools in Google Chrome, so I'm gonna use a lot of time doing stuff in the class as well, and I can get a lot of information about my HTML doing this. For example, if I look at the so if I have if my dev tools are wide, then it will be its separate tab. But if it's not that wide, then it will be on the same tab. It's these ones which are the computed styles, and that means whatever is like whatever wins over. So for example, if I don't know, if I have some padding on my anchor, on all my anchors, and my logo is an anchor, and then I have another padding on the logo specifically on that class, then that's gonna win over. So if I inspect it on this computed styles tab, then I'm only gonna see whatever has won over. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if I click on this little arrow, then I can see whatever styles it has, and then it will show me the one that has won over as the first one. Anyway, here I can see what display the logo has. And because we didn't specify any display properties, the default one for an anchor is always inline. So whenever we use padding and margin and stuff like that on inline elements, it is going to mess up their surroundings. They don't really work. They don't really work with width. They don't height, width, stuff like that doesn't really work with inline elements. So then we need to specify something else for our logo. And we could, for example, do it as a block. We could do it as an inline block, and then it would not cross over with other things. You see, it has solved our problem, but I'm not going to go into more detail on that because we wanted to jump up next to each other, so we'll solve that when we talk about display. But do you all understand why it was crossing over? It was missing a display property, and it had display inline. Okay, good. Number 5. Does anybody want to help with that? It's an easy one. Give a nice papaya with background color to the main. How do I do that?
Select the body.
Main.
Oh no, to the main. I'm sorry.
So I select the main, and then what do I do?
Background color.
Papaya with. Okay, that's actually a default color in CSS. There are some default colors also, tomato and white and black and gray and stuff like that. Sky blue, stuff like that it's nice to have these colors sometimes. All right. Number 6, get the article to fill 80% of the width and to be centered but text align left. That's a tricky one. Does anybody want to help with that?
Can I start with the article?
Mm-hmm.
And then we write the weight, 80.
Yeah.
And then text align left.
Yeah.
I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what happens if I actually okay, so I think what I meant here was I don't really know why it's working. It's probably because of
You said get the article to fill 80% of width and to be centered.
yeah.
So
The text will be centered.
the text will be centered. If you do like a margin 0 auto, the text will be centered. And it will be 80%.
Yeah, I just realized that I was looking at the wrong thing. Sorry. Yes. Sorry, say that again.
I mean, you said you get the article to fill 80% of width and to
Yeah.
be centered,
Mm-hmm.
but the text aligned left.
Yeah.
So if you give an 80% and you do a margin 0 auto, the text will be centered at 80%, but the box will be all the way 100%.
Right. That's
Only-
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we want, right? So, but we actually don't need the text align left because that's the default property. So what I meant saying but text align left was that I don't want you to just say text align center, which would also do whatever the no, it actually doesn't. Oh, okay, my bad, never mind. Yeah, what you should do is specify margin auto on the margin left and margin right. That will center stuff without messing up your text align. You can do what does 0 mean as the first number?
Up and down.
Yeah. You can do this. You can also say margin left auto and margin right auto, and the difference there is that you will not override the top and bottom margins, and sometimes that's important for you not to do if you have some margins coming from another class, some other styles. So for example, if you have like a utility class which centers things, then you would write margin left auto, margin right auto, not to be opinionated about the top and bottom margins. But in our case, it is totally fine to write margin 0 auto.
Now, you mentioned a utility class. So that brought me to a question that's been lingering in my head.
Mhm.
Let's say if you, when you do like multiple CSS on a file,
Mhm.
let's say you have one just to normalize instead of having a CSS file with 1,000 lines, so you break it up.
Mhm.
How does the hierarchy works? Does that work on the import? Let's say you do the reset first.
Yeah.
You link the reset first, because if you put this, the
Yeah.
first one you reset later, that will mess it up. So you have to follow the
Yeah.
order that you would have on 1,000 lines, but you have to follow that same order.
Yeah, you always. Do you guys understand the question? So, Ricardo is asking if we have multiple CSS stuff, how do we get it to do what we want? So, for example, if we have a reset or a normalize, how do we get our CSS to win out and not the normalize or reset?
When you write it later, it will be taken.
Yeah, exactly. So if CSS has the same specificity, do you know what that means? The same specificity. So for example, if
Using class with the class, the last class will win.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, if our article has class A and B, and then if we select A and say the background should be red, and then we say B, and then the background should be blue, then blue is going to win because it comes later and the specificity is the same. So if we have some reset stuff where we say all our H1s should have a margin 0, sometimes we do that, right? And then this comes from reset, and this comes from some local code. This is something I write and I want. Then here, if I say the margin should actually be 20, for example, then that's gonna win because it comes after the reset. So you import the most generic stuff first, and then the more specific stuff later on.
And that's actually what we do when we make the CSS file. We upload, or the HTML. First, we upload the file CSS for reset, and then we upload our file to CSS.
We have done that before. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so last one. Get the footer text to be centered and the font size to be 14 pixels.
Selector must be footer.
Yeah. Wasim?
Text.
How do I center text? Do you know?
Text.
Yeah.
Direct font size.
Yeah. So to center we use text align, and do you know which property it is?
14.
Yeah, that's the font size. If we want to center something, so what?
Text align.
Yeah, and text align.
Direct center.
Yeah. Center. And then the font size. Yeah. 14 pixels. Great. So did your solution sort of look the same when you were done? Yeah? All right.
Can we use VW for width?
Yeah. What, for the article, for example?
Yeah.
So do you know what the difference is between percent and the viewport width?
A viewport, it means on the screen, what you can see on the screen.
Yeah.
80% is Yeah, 80% of the screen as well.
Okay.
From the HTML file, from all the white file, we can take 80%. But V is like what's like the screen is.
Right. So let's take an example. Have you guys heard about this value VW and VH, viewport width and viewport height? It's sort of easy to understand what the difference is. So let's say that we have a main which fills I don't know, let's say 600 pixels, right? And we will also give it a margin auto. So if we say that the article should be 80%, then it's going to be 80% of its parent container, right? So if the main has a certain fixed width, it could also be 80% of the screen, right? Then the article would be 80% of its parent, yeah? And if we say width 80 viewport width, then it's going to ignore. It's not going to be a percent of its parent, it's going to be a percent of the viewport width.
Okay.
So this is sort of absolute, and the other one is sort of relative. Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with the viewport height. So if we say that I want the height to be 80 viewport height, then it's going to be 80% of your viewport of the screen, versus percent, which will be, well, right now it's just going to be, I think, maybe, I don't think it does anything. You know, yeah.
Krista, when you say 80% of its parents, what you exactly means? It's if you're working on the article, right?
Yeah.
If we say the article with 80% of its parents,
yeah,
80%.
Yeah. So you
main.
see, yeah, you see that's when I'm selecting the main, you see the blue one.
Yeah.
That's the content of the main. That's the width of the main.
Yes.
And then if I select the article, you see that there's some orange stuff, and that's like if I don't hover anything, you see there is some space on both sides, and that's because it's filling out 80% of the main, right? So the main has the background color. That's 80% of the screen, and then the article has 80% of the main.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's always relative to its parent.
Okay.
And if its parent doesn't have a width, then it's just gonna go up to its next parent. If it doesn't have a width, it would just go up and up and up and up and up. And if it reaches body and HTML and they just have a width of 100%, then it's going to be relative to viewport. Yeah. Okay. Well, good job. Did you find it difficult or was it okay?
Some of it was difficult.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. What about you guys?
Especially
Others?
The first to me was defining because I forgot the order of the sequence. You have to write about the measurement of top, bottom, and right, or if you want to write it.
Right. Yeah, that takes time. It's for me at least. It's always easiest to just experiment on the inspect itself, because then I see it right away, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it takes a little while to
For me, it was difficult to write.
To write?
Yeah, I have problem to write English.
Oh yeah.
So I have mistakes.
Yeah.
I prefer to work with the visual.
Yeah.
It's more. They
gives you more.
Yeah.
Autocomplete. Okay, I see. Well, you're always welcome to do that. You can copy the code and do it there if you want to. Okay, we're gonna take a 5